Donkey Kong is one of those gaming icons that everyone knows, but doesn't really have many great games behind him. Rare put Donkey Kong on the map with the Donkey Kong Country series on the SNES, to the point where some people regard them higher than the SNES Mario games. Donkey Kong's success continued over to the N64 with Donkey Kong 64, which while not many people would say it's Rare's best N64 game, many people enjoyed it. Once Rare and Nintendo parted ways, the Donkey Kong games became a lesser Nintendo series. Donkey Kong is now back due to successful Donkey Kong Country returns, but what about the games that came out in between those two? Well, there was the Mario vs Donkey Kong games, which were meant to be good but weren't really hits. There was also Donkey Kong Jungle Beat that tried something new but wasn't anything special. There was also Donkey Kong Barrel Blast that was a racing game which got critically panned. The developer behind that game though also made two other Donkey Kong games, DK King of Swing and DK Jungle Climber. In this video I'll be taking a look at DK Jungle Climber, as like most people, I never played either of these two games. So is DK Jungle Climber a forgotten classic, or was it forgotten for a very good reason? Let's see. First thing I need to mention is that, like most Nintendo licensed DS games, this wasn't developed by Nintendo. Instead, a company called Prawn developed it. I think that's how you say the name. As previously mentioned, they also made Donkey Kong Barrel Blast, as well as helping out in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. It's not really important who made the game at the end of the day, but it's worth noting. The story is that while Donkey Kong is on holiday to Sun Island, a giant banana appears. DK naturally goes after it, and it turns out that the giant banana is a spaceship controlled by a banana alien called Sananab, who explains that King K. Rool stole the crystal bananas from him, so DK promises to get them back. It's nice that they put effort into having an actual story, and while it's not bad, it isn't really necessary. There's a good amount of dialogue, but it doesn't have that same sense of humour that Rare put into their games, meaning that you can pretty much ignore all the conversations and not miss out on anything. This game is a platformer but doesn't control in a traditional way. Across each level are pegs which DK can grab onto. Using the L and R buttons you can make DK grab the pegs, which causes him to spin. When you let go, you go flying forward, allowing him to grab onto another peg. You can still walk normally on platforms, but need to climb the pegs to go upwards. That's the basic controls, and they do get 1 point for being new and interesting, but they could have been a lot better. Your main way of taking out enemies is to jump into them, but if there's an enemy below you, which there sometimes will be, then you have to grab a peg and try to aim yourself downwards. If you miss an enemy while jumping at them, however, whenever DK reaches his maximum height in a jump, he goes into grab mode, so anything he hits in this mode will kill you. The jumping in this game will mess you up a lot, as whenever DK starts falling he always holds out his hand, so you don't have that much control over him when he's falling. It's not too bad, but when you're trying to avoid or kill enemies in certain sections, you can get killed for stupid reasons. The precision of the controls is the main problem. If you grab two pegs at once you can lock into place, which is very useful. However, if you're only grabbing onto one peg, DK will spin at a constant speed. This is alright if you're not in a hurry, but if you are, then aiming DK is a pain, as if you're facing one way and you need to jump in the opposite direction, DK always jumps in that direction that it's facing, so you just have to wait until he turns all the way around. There are two improvements that would have made the controls more natural. One, if you could control DK's spinning speed, and two, if there were two separate jumps, one for grabbing pegs and one for attacking enemies. It's kind of embarrassing that when an enemy is right next to you, you can't really do much about it. As the controls are though, I never had any major problems, but when you look at other Nintendo 2D platformers, these controls are nowhere near as tight and precise. Diddy Kong joins you in this game. He has his cannon fodder, so you can take an extra hit, and you can fire him forward when you jump. Throughout the game, Diddy can also be used as a hammer, you can use feather wings to fly, and he can also be controlled indirectly. This brings me to what makes this game great. This game is one of the most creative platformers I've ever played. Each level introduces something new, and while other games have done this, such as the other Donkey Kong Country games, this game takes it to a new level. You never know what to expect when you enter a level, and I was both surprised and impressed about how well they kept up the creativity of the levels throughout the game. In a way, it makes the new control scheme worth it, as while it isn't perfect, it allows for a lot of innovation and variety. This does come with some small problems though. The first are the tutorials. At the beginning of the game you can play for a tutorial to learn all the game mechanics, but it goes on for far too long as they make you play pointless minigames. To the game's credit, you can skip the tutorial, but I didn't want to miss out on anything that might have been important. Also during levels, Cranky shows up to offer tutorials on anything new that the game throws at you. With how much is in this game though, he shows up far too much, and whenever you talk to him, more detailed versions of the Kong show up. These tutorials needed to be a lot shorter and quicker, as it does disrupt the game's pace one too many times. I will admit this is a nitpick, but it is something I did find slightly annoying. The second problem with the creativeness of this game is the range of levels. I feel stupid for even complaining about the variety in the game, and overall it is a positive feature of this game, but there are some levels that don't fit quite right. The game takes place over 6 different islands, each with their own standard platformer type themes. However, during some levels you meet up with Salanab, who takes you to an alternate dimension. It's a nice idea to help the game feel fresh, but it doesn't feel right to be in a Donkey Kong game. The Donkey Kong games do have a specific personality to them, mostly being related to islands or the jungle, so it's weird to jump into an alien portal to a toy box world. Most people probably won't mind, as introducing these new level themes means that there's more they could do with each level, but I found it to be so strange to be playing as Donkey Kong in a toy box. The graphics are really nice though. They're similar to Donkey Kong Country, but they are crisper and not as messy, so while they aren't quite as distinct, they're generally easier and nicer to look at. I wouldn't say this is a hard game, and with there only being 6 islands with 5 levels each in them, it also isn't that long. However, in true Nintendo fashion, while getting to the end of the game isn't too difficult, the real challenge comes from getting all the collectibles. The Kong letters, the banana Kongs and the large DK coin return, and there's also a flammable barrel of some kind to collect. This game isn't about exploring levels in the same way as Yoshi's Island, but instead is more about daring to go off the beaten track, as you can usually spot where most of the collectibles are, so it's more the challenge of getting them without dying. I like this approach, as it means getting them is all about skill and timing, but they have the same problem that a lot of game collectibles have. If you die, they reset. I admit that this is something that I personally find frustrating, and most people accept that this is the case in games. But in a game, if I collect something that was challenging to get only to die due to something completely unrelated, then I'm simply not going to recollect the item. I'll be fair, this is a problem with games in general and not just DK Jungle Climber, and to the game's credit the levels are split into different areas, and once you get past an area, your collectibles in the previous area is safe. However, like I said though, the controls aren't perfect, so when you die trying to collect something because DK was facing the wrong way, I'm sure most of you will probably give up trying to get 100%. There are extras outside the main adventure mode which mostly involve the challenges. These are mini-games each with 3 levels, although you're ultimately going for high scores. I didn't spend much time playing them, as while they're not bad, none of them are that addictive. I'm guessing they're only here as, thanks to Super Mario 64 DS, every Nintendo game on the DS included mini-games. There is also a versus mode, but I didn't end up playing it, but it's probably safe to say it's no Mario Kart killer. DK Jungle Climber is definitely a surprising game. There's so much creativity with the gameplay mechanics that it stays enjoyable. It isn't perfect though due to the short length and sometimes annoying controls, but there was a lot of effort put into this game and it shows. Maybe it doesn't excel in all areas, but if you love Nintendo platformers and want to see a new take on them, then this game is well worth playing. My score is 7.0 out of 10. It doesn't rank among the best platformers, but it is fun nonetheless thanks to how inventive it can be.